Hi guys, Mr. Brady here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about column subtraction. I've had a couple of emails this morning, a few people I think struggling a little bit with this method. I think probably particularly when we get to the borrowing part, when we can't do this minus this, we don't know what to do. So I thought I'd do a video to help us out. So I'm going to have a range of different questions, probably starting a bit easier and getting a bit more difficult as we go along. So hopefully some of you will find this quite beneficial. Now, you'll see in my board, the first thing I've done is I've put my column headings. I've got my thousands column, my hundreds column, my tens, and my ones. And I think that's really important to do for every question. No matter how good you think you are at column subtraction, and some of you are great, I know that, always good to have this to make sure you put your numbers in the right place. Because if you don't line them up correctly at the start, it's impossible to get it correct. And you've already gone down the wrong route. So really remember to put your thousands, hundreds, tens, and your ones straight away. So we have question 1, 286 minus 114. I'm going to put these in. Now, 286, I've got 200 here, so my 2 is going to go in the hundreds column. Then I've got my 80, so my 8 is going to go into the tens column, and then my 6 will go in the ones column, so 286. I'm then going to have my 114, so I have 114. The other thing I've got to remember to do, just so I don't get confused at all, is I'm going to put my little minus here. That means there's no possible way I'm going to add. And that may sound a bit silly, but some of you guys will know in previous lessons, you might have done this and then added them. I'm not really sure why, so you put the minus there to make sure. And then you put a nice line underneath. Right, next part is where do we start? We always start with minus with the smallest column. Start with our ones. So we have 6 minus 4, which equals 2. 6 minus 4 is 2. Then it goes to my tens column. 8 minus 1 is 7. And finally 2 minus 1 is 1. So my answer is 172. Quite a simple start, I think. I think that thing a lot of us are pretty good with. Alright, so I will take that one off. Where's that? Put my ball rubber. I'll put it over there. Goodness me. Right then. So that's question 1 all done. Nice and simple. Question 2 in a different coloured pen. Isn't that exciting? Where it gets a little bit trickier. So let's say we have 342 minus 125. 342 minus 125. Now, the first part, exactly the same. 342, I'll put in my 342, because I said 300, so 3 must go there, go after it, and then 125. Thousands column hasn't been used yet. Not a problem, because none of my numbers had 1,000 in them. Don't be tempted just to immediately start from the left. We don't need to here. And I'm going to put it in my minus. One other thing I forgot to say at the start, whichever number's first has to go on top. Has to, okay? If it goes the other way around, the question won't work, okay? It won't give you the correct answer. So the number's first, got to put that number first. Okay, so I do my line. We know, start in my ones column, and I do 2 minus 5. Now at that point we should be thinking, that can't work. Imagine you had 2 sweets and someone said, oh, can I have 5 sweets? You try to give them 5 sweets, wouldn't work. Equally, you've got 2 pencil sharpeners on your table and someone says, oh, can I have 5 please? It wouldn't possibly work. What a lot of people do at this point is they go, oh, I can't do 2 minus 5, so I'll do 5 minus 2 and that's 3. Cannot do that. You are not allowed to swap them. Not allowed. So 2 minus 5 does not work. So what do? We go to our next door neighbour. So we go to our next neighbour over here. And we knock on the door of our next neighbour and we say, hello neighbour, can I please borrow 1 from you? Just 1 is all I need. And 100% of the time, you're lucky, your neighbour's really nice. And they'll go, yep, if I've got 1 to spare, you can have it. So you take 1 from your neighbour. Now if your neighbour had 4, and they give you 1, how many are they going to have left? They're going to have 3 left. Okay, so they had 4, given 1, got 3 left. The 1 carries over and it goes in front of the 2, and that becomes a 12. And the reason it's 12 is that the 1 that you borrowed, if we think about it, it's 110 that you borrowed. So the 10 goes over. So now you've got 12 minus 5. At this point, we should be able to carry on 5. Fine. 12 minus 5, that is going to be 7. 3 minus 2 is going to be 1. And 3 minus 1 is going to be 2. So my answer is 217. So I'll just show you that borrowing bit one more time, just to make sure we're all sure on it. So we can't do 2 minus 5. So we go to our neighbour and we knock on the door of our neighbour and we say, "Hello neighbour, can I borrow 1? And our neighbour's really nice, so our neighbour says, "Yes, of course you can. You can have 1. My neighbour has 4, I've taken 1, that means the 3 are going to be left. And the 1 that carries over goes in front of the 2 to make it a 12. At that point, I can do all my methods absolutely fine. Alright, so that is the start of borrowing. Okay. At that point, I think still not too complicated, a little trickier, I understand, and if you want to watch that a couple of times to make sure you're confident with it, absolutely fine. We're now going to move on to another bit of borrowing, but this time we're going to bring in our thousands column, because I want to show one other mistake that is quite often made. 570. Alright, this time, this number here, 2,468. I've said the word thousand, so I must need to use my thousand column somewhere. So I've got 2,468. Right, this number, 517. 517. I haven't said the word thousands, so I'm not going to use this column. Don't just start from the left because you feel like it. 517. I'm not going to use my thousands. My 5 goes in the hundreds. The 1 there and the 7 there. So this is empty. That's fine. That's not a problem at all because you've put that number in the correct place. You've put that one in the correct place. You don't need to use this one yet. So, I'm going to, I need to go on a little minus. So I'm going to put a little minus in there to help me. So, we know now I start at the ones column. 8 minus 7, I can do that. That is 1. 6 minus 1 is 5, that's absolutely fine. 4 minus 5, can't do that. Got 4 sweets, give someone 5 wouldn't work. So I go to my neighbour, knock on the door. My neighbour's very kind. My neighbour had 2, gives me 1, there's 1 left, and that becomes 14. So 14 minus 5 is going to be 9, and that leaves me now, I've got 1 minus nothing, 1 minus 0. So imagine you had 1 sweet, and you gave someone 0 of them, what would you have? You'd still have 1. You haven't given away anything, so you've still got 1. Okay? So 1,951. So if there's a gap here, then basically, I'll put it in just to help us out. That gap there basically means it's going to be a 0. Okay? So that should be nice and simple. Alright. Now we're getting into the bit of the trickier stuff. Let me see how we're doing time. Yep, doing all right for time. I'll do a couple more questions. Now it's going to get a little bit trickier. Okay, I think I've got time for 2 more maybe. Let's do... let's do a couple of thousands questions. 3,231 minus 1,176. Okay, so I'm going to go a bit quicker now. We'll put my numbers in because I think we're quite confident. 3, 2, 3, 1 minus 1, 1, 7, 6. Alright, so we start with 1 minus 6. Can't do that. I'm going to go a little bit quicker now because we've done a couple of examples. So I'm going to borrow 1 from my neighbour. That leaves 2. I've now got 11. 11 minus 6 is 5. Next one, 2 minus 7. I can't do 2 minus 7. We immediately start panicking because I've already borrowed. Doesn't matter. All I'm going to do is borrow again. You can borrow twice. You can borrow the whole way through if you need to. Okay, it doesn't matter. So, I'm going to borrow from my 2. That leaves a 1 there. means I've now got 12. 12 minus 7 is also 5. 1 minus 1, have one sweet, I give it to someone. What have I got left? I've got 0. And 3 minus 1 is 2. So you noticed here, I borrowed at 2 different times in the same question. That's not a problem. If this was a lower number, I might have needed to borrow again, possibly. All right, that happens sometimes. You might have to borrow 3 times, 4 times. If it's a really long number, you might have to borrow 7,000 times. Probably not that many times, but you see what I mean. You might need to borrow more than once, possibly. All right, and the last question we are going to do, and this is one that a lot of people really struggle with, and they look at and think, oh my words, how on earth do I do that? What have I not used yet? We'll go to purple. Right then. 900 minus 242. 900 minus 242. So I put in my 900 and I minus 242. Right, we're going to do the method as we normally would, and then we're going to get stuck. But it's not going to be a problem because we're going to work it out. We're going to start with 0 minus 2. Can't do that. So I go to my neighbour. Oh, this is a problem. I knock on my neighbour's door. I say, can I borrow one? And my neighbour says, well, if I had one to give, I absolutely would do it, but I can't. So it's a struggle. But the neighbour is quite a smart guy. He decides, no, I haven't got one. But what I'm going to do is I'll go to my neighbour and see if he's got one to spare. So he knocks on the door with a 9 and says, Mr. 9, can I borrow one? And Mr. 9 goes, absolutely, you can. Okay, so he's now got 8 left. Now what's important is that it was this guy who knocked on 9's door, not this guy. So he's borrowed 1, so this now becomes 10. Okay? Then we basically start the process all over again. 0 minus 2, I still can't do it. He goes to his neighbour. Now his neighbour's got 10. His neighbour's got loads of numbers. He says, can I have 1? And then he goes, absolutely. So his 10 becomes a 9, and now that becomes a 10. So we have 10 minus 2, which is 8. 9 minus 4, which is 5. 8 minus 2, which is 6. I'm going to go through that whole thing one more time. A bit tricky, I think I've got enough time for this. One more time. This one is quite tricky. It'll be a little bit quicker this time though. So 900 minus 242. Okay. 0 minus 2 I can't do. I go to my neighbour. Knock, knock, knock. Oh dear, he's got 0. So he goes to his neighbour. He borrows 1 from the 9, which makes it an 8. And now this one becomes a 10. And then start over again. 0 minus 2, still can't do it. I go to my neighbour. My neighbour's now got 10. I borrow 1 from the 10, which makes it a 9. And now this one becomes a 10. Okay? So 1's borrowed from here, goes to here. Then 1's borrowed from here and goes to here. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 4 is 5. And 8 minus 2 is 6. Alright, we've done lots of stuff there. So we had no borrowing at all. We had borrowing here. We had borrowing moving in the thousands. We had borrowing twice. And then we had to do an extra borrow. Alright? This one's a bit tricky. And if you don't quite get number 5, that's okay. That's the most tricky one. But I'm hoping we should be now quite clear on number 4. And maybe starting to understand number 5 as well. Okay? But I do hope, just perfect time, I hope that's helped you out with the column subtraction. My plan is over the next few days of a half term to do a couple more column addition maybe, some English adverbs and adjectives, okay? But I hope this video helped you guys today, alright? Cheers guys.